back to yet another informative session of Quest for Literature. This session is going to be the second part of the prologue of the Canterbury Tales. If you have not yet watched the first session, I had given the link in the description box. Do watch it. Before getting into the session, if you are not yet subscribed to my channel, do subscribe as well as click on the bell icon and enable all option so that you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. First person today we are going to see is the man of law. He had in-depth knowledge in law. He was able to cite cases even from the golden period of the William Conqueror's time. He was wise but slightly suspicious of everything. Spoke well, and he was often appointed by the king as a judge. He wore a multicolored coat tied with a silk belt and pins. The next person is the Franklin. He is the companion of man of law. He is a wealthy farmer with sociable temperament. His beard was as white as a daisy. He wanted to live a luxurious life like the son of Epicurus. His house smelt with baked meat, fish, and flesh. He kept fat porridge and fish ready to serve on the dining table. He is compared to St. Julian in hospitality. His food habits changed according to the changing season. The next person we see here is the wife of Bath. Was a good wife who came from a place near to Bath. She was slightly deaf in one ear. She was an expert in weaving cloth. She was always the first to approach the collection box in the church. But if any lady came early before her, she withdrew her hands from donation. At times, she felt very angry. Her kerchiefs were finely woven and were made of high-quality fabric. The veil she wore on Sundays weighed 10 pounds. Her stockings were scarlet red and they were tightly tied. Were very soft and new. Her face was bold and fair, red in complexion. She was a worthy woman throughout her life. She had married 5 husbands at the church door, besides other lovers she had in her youth. She also traveled far and wide, visited Jerusalem thrice. She had gone to Rome to the shrine of St. James in Galilee. She was gap-toothed, and it was a sign of boldness, gluttony, and lavishness. She rode her horse with ease. On her head she had a hat which was as wide as a butler or a shield. In company she laughed and cracked jokes. She knew the remedy of love, and she was an expert in this art. She calls herself Alison. Next we see is the Five Guildsmen. They appear as a group. They were newly rich who were very well afforded for pilgrimage. They belong to labor unions and social fraternities. They are haberdasher. They wear their characteristic uniform, which were fresh and newly trimmed. Their wives had pushed them to go on a pilgrimage so that they could be called madams. The guildsmen are accompanied by a cook. This person we see is the cook. The cook's portrait is the 20th in the prologue. The cook was employed by the guildsman. He boiled chicken with marrow bones, sharp flavored powder and spices. He could recognize the flavor of Lenten ales. He has a running sore on his chin. The kitchen he runs is unclean with a number of flies. His name is Roger, and he is the 4th one to tell his tale. Next person we see is the miller. He is a huge man with red beard, wide black nostrils, and a gaping mouth as big as a furnace. There was a rat on his nose with a tuft of red hair on it. He is strong enough to break doors with his head. He was an expert in grinding corn. He is named as Robin. The miller used to steal grain by pushing the scales with his thumb. He lost his thumb as the punishment and wore a golden thumb. He wore a white coat and blue hood. The next person we see is the Manciple. A Manciple is normally in charge of purchasing food and supplies for a school or college. Here, this Manciple is in charge of a college of lawyers. He had worked with more than 30 masters who were expert and skilled lawyers. He was sure that they could help him to come out of any legal issue. Though the Manciple was uneducated, he made fool of the masters with his arithmetics. This person we see is the Plowman. He was the brother of the poor parson. He was as holy and virtuous as his brother. Lived a simple life of hard labor. He did works like loading cart full of cow dung. He represented the medieval poor and virtuous portrait in the poem like Prairie's the Ploughman. He donated a good portion of his income in paying the taxes to the church. Next person we see is the shipman or the sailor. He came from Dartmouth. He looked like a ruthless smuggler. He wore a heavy woolen gown that stretched to the knees. He had a dagger hanging on a strap around his neck. The hot summer had made his skin brown. He knew his craft very well. He could judge the tides, the currents, and other hazards. His beard had been shaken by a strong wind. He knew every inlet in Britain and Spain. He had the habit of stealing wine when the merchant turned his back. His ship was called the Magdalene. Person we see is the physician. He is the best at his profession because he knows the cause of the disease and its cure. He eats a simple, moderate diet that is healthy, but his spiritual health is not that so good. He does not read the Bible and has only little knowledge of religion. He loves gold and therefore saves gold. He believes in the dictum, gold is physic, is a cordial. He is dressed in bright red and blue gown made of finest silk. Next person we see is the Reeve. He is named Oswald. He is so skinny and his legs look like straight sticks. His head is shaven like that of a priest. He wore the cloak of friar. He has managed estates for 20 years. He was in full charge of his master's sheep, cattle, swine, dairy, horses, poultry, and grain. He could foresee seasons and tell about harvest. In his youth, he was a good carpenter. His low-bred, undersized horse was called Scott. His portrait is the 20th in the prologue. And the last person today we will see in this session is the host. He acts as a guide to the pilgrims like the director of a play. He is who suggests the idea of telling tales. He is a joy fellow with appearing eyes. He takes the stories seriously. He becomes upset when he hears the tragic stories of the monk and the physician. He is delighted to hear the stories of nun's priest, which ends in comedy. He is named Harry Bailey, and he often played the role of a peacemaker. That's the end of today's session. Thank you all for listening. If you find the video is good, like it as well as share it with your friends. Till the time we meet next, stay tuned to Quest for Literature, keep reading and know the world.